G'day everyone, Rune here. So, those of you that have been watching my channel for a while now may remember my very old Dragon Ball what if Bardock was king of the Saiyans and Goku was a girl. It was a what if that I'd been messing with for fun around the time that I got my first 100 subs. So, not having anything planned for the occasion, I decided to improvise and use the fusion what if that I'd been messing with. Now, some newcomers to this channel may have noticed that this series ended at the end of the equivalent original Dragon Ball series with a teaser for the events of Dragon Ball Z on the way, but since it has not received any updates. This is because it got cancelled. To make a long story short, what had originally started as something fun and silly had become a colossal mess. This is because I'd started writing it when I only had a very surface level knowledge of the Dragon Ball lore, some of which I later found out was completely wrong. And what I thought of as 2 what-if scenarios fused together actually turned out to be somewhere between 3 and 5. Making this story more of a straight-up AU with less constraints like a traditional fanfiction, at least more so than what a what-if is typically like. With the frustration of trying to reconcile all of these differences with the canon events and find logical reasons for why this or that happened, while still making it an entertaining story that didn't require going off on a 10-minute tangent to explain why something was happening, and continue having fun all at the same time just became a hassle. Needless to say, my motivation for continuing the story had just completely died. So, I'd put a poll on my community tab asking my audience if they'd be alright with me not continuing the story. And all of you were just so supportive and kind, I can't thank you all enough for being so understanding, and for being so interested in my stories both old and new. However, as that poll was a year ago and many of my subscribers only joined recently, it's understandable that many of you have recently posted comments on those old videos either asking when the next chapter is going to be coming out or if I'm going to be bringing it back. And while I never finished writing the story properly, I did write notes on what was going to happen all the way up to the end of Z. So, in order to give you all a more satisfying ending to this glorious mess, and to truly put it to bed once and for all, allow me to present to you Princess Kakarat, The Complete Story. Chapter 1. Long Live the King. With Bardock as the king, the Saiyan society is a fair bit different from what it was in the original timeline. While the Saiyans are still warriors and rather single-minded when it comes to getting stronger, there are several small differences that have a big impact on their society as a whole. The class system is no longer a set-in-stone thing, though that doesn't stop some Saiyans from still using the terminology. It's not something that's enforced. To King Bardock, a warrior is a warrior. Anyone who fights is deserving of respect, especially if they hold the determination to fight despite any disadvantage they may have. The planet is also not being called Planet Vegeta, but is still being called by its old name of Planet Plant. They also aren't a race that would go out and conquer other planets for kicks or money. Bardock expresses a desire to protect those around him on several occasions, especially those dear to him and those that are looked down upon for being weaker. Instead, I see the Saiyans being a race of bounty hunters in this timeline. It makes complete sense. The Saiyans get to do what they do best and don't draw the ire of, say, the Galactic Patrol. However, they do unfortunately gain the attention of Frieza. Bardock, knowing that trying to fight against this guy without any allies or a plan would only result in the deaths of every Saiyan, reluctantly agrees to become part of Frieza's army. This decision makes many of his subjects unhappy, as they view this action as an act of weakness. Adding fuel to this fire is the fact that Bardock had decided to take a woman who was seen as very weak as his queen, bearing him a son and daughter with low power levels. One Saiyan, however, saw an opportunity in the young princess. Vegeta's son, Vegeta II, had only been born a few years prior, and Vegeta Sr. was a general in the king's army. If he planned this right, he could set up his son to become the new king of the Saiyans, without needing to mount a rebellion. Vegeta went to King Bardock, asking after the princess, saying that he heard she was sickly. Bardock assures him that this is not the case, and that his daughter is only a little low on the power level scale. Vegeta still expresses concern, stating that with such a low power level, it made her a prime target for abductors and assassins. Bardock does concede that it's a problem. My king, if I may be so bold, I have a suggestion. I'm all ears, Vegeta. What do you have in mind? My son, Vegeta, has quite a high power level for someone his age. If you would allow it, your highness, he could be assigned to accompany the princess. He would be a bodyguard, playmate, and once she is old enough, a training partner. Bardock contemplates this. Kakarat is still in her nursing pod. She won't be out for at least another 2 years. Are you sure your son wouldn't rather be out getting some action? My son is a serious young lad. He knows that the protection of the royal family is just as important as the advancement of the Saiyan race. Bardock, finally convinced, agrees to assign Vegeta Jr. to be the protector of his daughter, Princess Kakarat. Around this time, it also comes to his attention that another child has been born with a very high power level, and an explosive ability. Knowing just how tenuous the Saiyan existence is at the moment, Bardock calls the boy's father, Paragus. He talks with the other Saiyan, explaining just how close Frieza is to destroying them all, and also lets him in on a little secret that he's been planning ever since they came under Frieza's command. For the past few years, I've been shoring up our forces, preparing for the right time to rebel. I think your son might just give us the edge we need to win this. However, if Frieza catches wind of him, I don't doubt that he'll kill all of us just to get to him. Paragus, I'm asking you to take your son and escape to planet 864. It is uninhabited, but there is plenty of animals and plant life there for the two of you to live off of. Go there and train your son. Teach him to control this power of his. And, when the time is right, I'll send you a signal to return, so that we can free the Saiyans from Frieza's grip. If I don't contact you within 10 years, assume that Frieza has destroyed us, and just focus on surviving. Paragus is actually rather okay with this. Bardock isn't banishing his son because he sees the child as a threat. He's not actually banishing him at all. Bardock is simply asking Paragus to take his son on an extended training mission, in hopes of becoming the ace in the hole, so to speak. In addition, this is basically guaranteed survival for him and his son if Frieza does decide to wipe them out. Paragus agrees and leaves for planet 864 immediately. And because everything tends to happen simultaneously all at once and forever apart in Dragon Ball, not long after, Bardock receives a strange visitor. He introduces himself as Beerus, the god of destruction. Bardock, confused, asks if the title is literal or metaphorical. He needs to be sure so he knows how to approach the situation. When Beerus confirms that the title is very literal, Bardock politely asks what brings the god to his home, especially so late at night. Beerus then explains that he was planning on taking a long nap soon and was looking for a suitable pillow since he had accidentally blown up his last one. Planet Plant happened to be closest, so he decided to pop around to get a suitable pillow from the king. Bardock, knowing better than to get an entity with the title of God of Destruction angry at him in his home, with his wife and children just a few rooms down, obliges the bizarre request. Contacting one of the servants, he asks them to bring 2 of the castle's finest pillows, fit for Queen Guinea herself. When the servant arrives, he's startled by the 2 strange individuals in the room. Bardock quickly assures him that this is just a diplomatic meeting and asks the servant to present the pillows to the 2 guests. The servant does so with all the respect and reverence that such a situation would demand. Beerus and Whis take the pillows and begin examining them, while Bardock nods to them respectfully. 2 pillows fit for my wife, 1 for you and 1 for your companion. Bardock isn't about to make an assumption that could get the cat mad, so he settles on a relatively safe term for the angel accompanying the god. Beerus huffs and marches up to Bardock's bed, saying that his pillows are probably nicer. But to his surprise, Bardock's pillows are filled with nothing but straw, not comfortable at all. When Beerus asks Bardock how he could sleep on something like this, Bardock just shrugs and says that's how he's always slept. They are then interrupted by the sound of dull banging. Bardock sighs and apologizes to his guests before asking if he could duck down to the nursery to see what's gotten his daughter all fussy again. Beerus is actually quite curious about this and decides to accompany him. He'd like to meet this young princess himself. As the 3 are making their way to the nursery, the sound of baying slowly stops and is replaced by a male voice softly singing a lullaby. A smile comes to Bardock's lips as they reach the nursery and look in. Inside the room, a young Vegeta Jr. is standing next to an incubator, singing softly to the small baby girl inside. Bardock walks into the room and addresses the Protector, asking if Kakarat had gotten fussy because he'd left the room again. Vegeta apologizes for disturbing the king, explaining that he'd left the room to get a book, thinking that he could go there and back before the princess noticed his absence. Bardock waves off the apology, simply smiling and commenting on how attached Kakarat has become to the young Saiyan. A statement that Vegeta gets embarrassed over and denies, saying that she just doesn't like being alone. Bardock, still smiling, ruffles Vegeta's hair. "I'm glad I let your father talk me into assigning you to watch over her. I get the feeling that the two of you will become great partners on the battlefield one day." Beerus is quite surprised. Displays of affection from a Saiyan? He's never heard of such a thing. Walking into the room, he walks right up to the incubator and closely eyes the young princess. When the large cat comes close, the young princess smiles, almost in response to his presence. Now that has got him curious. Accepting the two pillows, Beerus and Whis take their leave. High above the planet, Beerus tells Frieza that destroying the Saiyans would be a waste. Secretly, he really wants to see Bardock and his family again. He has a feeling that there might be big things ahead for them. Unfortunately, Frieza is Frieza and isn't going to listen to Beerus if he really thinks that the Saiyans are a threat. A few years go by and it's about time for Bardock to unleash his plan as Kakarat is about ready to come out of her incubator and Gine and Raditz were sent off-world a few weeks prior. Over the last few months, Bardock has been quietly sending the weaker Saiyans that wouldn't be able to fight or who had other things to worry about like their kids to other worlds with similar power levels to them. This would allow a large number of Saiyans to lie low if their rebellion went sideways. However, just a few days before Kakarat is set to come out of her incubator, Frieza sends out a message for all Saiyans in the field to return to Planet Plant. Bardock knows what this means. Frieza is planning to take them out. All of the Saiyans that Frieza knows about are within, at most, 4 days of Planet Plant, but Paragus and Broly are on Planet 864, which is a full week away. There's no time to contact Paragus and get him and his son back to Planet Plant before Frieza makes his move. There's only one option left. The Saiyans are just going to have to fight with what they have. Thankfully, Kakarat will be able to come out of her incubator the day before the fight. He can still save 2 more lives. Yes, I just said 2. Bardock knows just how attached his daughter has become, however subconsciously, to her protector, and Vegeta is still a child himself. Preparing one more pod, Bardock places Vegeta and Kakarat within it. Vegeta looks up at his king as his princess cries in distress. Bardock smiles reassuringly at the two children, telling them that this isn't going to be for long and it's just to make sure they don't get caught in the crossfire. "Vegeta, I'm counting on you to look after Kakarat. Keep her safe, but more importantly, make sure you both survive. I'll come for you both the first chance I get. Until then, make sure you both get as strong as you can. This isn't an order as your king, but a request as the father of the little girl next to you." Bardock turns to Kakarat, who is looking up at him with tear-filled eyes. "Kakarat, I know that you'll do me, your mother, and your brother proud. Never forget about us." Bardock places a necklace with a round pendant bearing the Saiyan royal family crest into Kakarat's hand. With that, he sends the two children away to the distant planet known as Earth. Sadly, the rebellion would be a failure, and Bardock, along with every Saiyan that fought beside him, would be wiped out. But, thanks to Bardock's forward thinking and common sense to not trust Frieza, roughly 10% of the Saiyan race survived, including his family. Chapter 2: Life on Earth. When the pod carrying the princess and protector crashes on Earth, it causes quite a din, drawing the attention of an old man that lives nearby. When he goes to investigate, he finds a young boy trying to comfort a little girl who's currently crying very loudly. Noticing the old man, the little boy stands up and moves in front of the girl protectively. The old man smiles gently, trying to show the boy that he means no harm. "Hello there, lad. I'm Gohan. I get the feeling you two are a little lost. I live nearby if you'd like somewhere to stay the night." The little boy continues to stare at Gohan suspiciously, but when he looks over his shoulder at the little girl behind him, his expression changes to one of worry. Turning to the girl fully, he picks her up into his arms and nods to Gohan to lead the way. Once at his house, Gohan begins to feed the two children and soon notices some very odd things about them. For starters, they both have monstrous appetites, even the little girl who can't be any older than 3. For another, they have tails that move at their will. He tries to ask the boy where they're from, why they were on the mountain alone, where their parents were, and even about the pendant around the little girl's neck. But the boy doesn't seem to trust Gohan and says nothing. Well, can you at least tell me you and your little sister's names so I know what to call you? I am Vegeta. Her name is Kakarat. And she's not my sister. Several weeks passed and the two children quickly become a bright spot in Gohan's life. While the two have monstrous levels of energy and are unnaturally powerful, at least in Vegeta's case, Kakarat is a delight, always smiling and trying to be close to the others. Remember, Saiyans are different in this timeline as a result of Bardock being the king. Also, pretty much everyone in Bardock's family seems to be more empathic, even in the original timeline, which probably means that they're throwbacks to the ancient good Saiyans. Add to that, she would also be growing up with the knowledge of what Frieza had done and the belief that she and Vegeta are the last of their kind. She'd probably grow up very clingy. Think of how canon Goku is with the 4-star Dragon Ball and you've got a pretty good idea. Vegeta is also a great help around the house, often helping to chop firewood or carry heavy things. But mostly, he helps with keeping Kakarat out of trouble. Remember, his whole job, the last order given to him by his king, was to keep her safe, and to make sure they both become stronger. Vegeta was never royalty in this timeline, so he doesn't have as much of an ego. He's definitely still prideful, but not to a detrimental amount. Instead of being Saiyan Saga levels of pride, it's more End of Boo Saga levels. He would also take great pride in his job and in how much Kakarat hangs around him. Being made the protector to a member of the royal family would be one of the highest honors a Saiyan could receive, so he's going to take that job very seriously. One day, Vegeta finally trusts Gohan enough to tell him the truth about who they are. Gohan is quite surprised to discover that not only are these two from space, but little Kakarat is the princess of their race. It is also strange to him that there is a race of beings whose entire way of life is based around fighting and getting stronger. Vegeta has a request for Gohan. He wants the old man to teach him and Kakarat how to fight, so that they can both become stronger. It was his job to protect her, but when Frieza was planning to destroy the Saiyan race, Bardock had sent them both to Earth, knowing that neither of them would be of any use in the fight. He never wanted to be in a position where he was too weak to even properly protect the princess ever again. Gohan, commending the boy for his desire to protect another, and now knowing about their tragic story, promises to not only train the two, but to raise them as if they were his own. Years pass, and Vegeta and Kakarat become very close with Gohan, with Kakarat even calling him Grandfather Gohan. Despite Gohan's best efforts, he never manages to get Vegeta to do the same. Though he does manage to score a small victory when he manages to get him to start calling him Master Gohan rather than the Saiyan word for teacher. That is another fun little thing. With there being two Saiyans, both with their memories of their homeworld and society, the Saiyan language would also be getting used fairly regularly throughout the series. When the two are a little older, he decides to split his two prized possessions between the two. He gives the Power Ball to Vegeta and the 4-star Dragon Ball to Kakarat. While the two Saiyans become stronger through training, Vegeta is also making sure that Kakarat is training her mind. After all, they don't know if anyone else in her family is still alive, so there is a possibility that she's the only heir to the throne. And Vegeta is not about to let the future queen of the Saiyans be a complete moron. That's not to say that Kakarat is as smart as Bulma or anything, but she is a bit more on the ball and less prone to making really boneheaded decisions. Also, due to Vegeta being there and Kakarat knowing about her origins, Grandfather Gohan does not get stepped on, because both Saiyan children know better than to look at the full moon. Also, because of there being two Saiyans around, both Vegeta and Kakarat would grow stronger faster. One day, when Kakarat is 12 and Vegeta is 15, they are out gathering food for dinner when Kakarat is nearly hit by a car. Vegeta, his protectiveness kicking in, nearly destroys the car until Kakarat stops him. A girl comes out and apologizes for nearly running the little girl over. She introduces herself as Bulma and says that she's looking for something in the area. They invite her to their house to speak to Grandfather Gohan, and on the way, Bulma asks about the pendant around Kakarat's neck. Kakarat simply says that it's a memento from her father. When they arrive, Gohan is surprised to see a young woman all the way out there. He is even more surprised when she explains that she's looking for the Dragon Balls. Kakarat asks why Bulma wants the balls, and she explains the legend surrounding them. When she says she wants to wish for a lifetime supply of strawberries, Kakarat doesn't believe her for a second. However, the thought of the wish the Dragon Balls could give does give her an idea. She says to Bulma that she and Vegeta will accompany her and help her on her quest, as it's likely she could get killed going on her own. However, she has a favor to ask. If anything changes during this adventure, and you don't want to use that wish, I want to be the one to use it. I won't try to steal it, I'll only make it if you don't need it. When Bulma asks what wish she wants to make, she gives a small, sad smile and says that there's something she wants to confirm. With the deal made, Kakarat and Vegeta begin their journey with Bulma. On their way, they meet a turtle who asks them to take him to the sea. Vegeta initially just wants to leave it, but Kakarat agrees to help it. Partly due to Grandfather Gohan teaching them to always help out others in need, and partly due to growing up hearing Vegeta's stories about how noble a man her father was. Upon returning the turtle to the sea, they meet Master Roshi, who tries to give the children the flying Nimbus. But Vegeta can't use it for some reason, and they both already know how to fly anyway thanks to Vegeta teaching Kakarat. However, the Nimbus does make Kakarat remember something Gohan had told them, about a man he had known. She asks Master Roshi if he knows a man named Gohan. Roshi confirms that he does and quickly realizes that she and Vegeta must be the children that his old student had taken in. When Bulma realizes that Roshi has one of the Dragon Balls, he hands it over without much of a fuss, since she is traveling with the students of his old friend. Things continue like this for a while. Oolong is beaten by Vegeta, who goes a little harder on him than strictly necessary due to the fact that he had been acting like a pervert towards Kakarat. The two Saiyans find Bulma's little candy trick utterly hilarious. When they meet Yamcha and he tries to do his bandit shtick, Kakarat decides to fight him, wanting to test how well she can fight without Vegeta protecting her. Vegeta respects this and stays out of it. They fight for quite a bit, but Kakarat does win. When Yamcha is told that the one he just lost to is a girl, he is floored. He had just fought a girl and hadn't been affected by his phobia. Not only that, but she was a really good fighter. He decides to join them. Now, when they come to the Ox King and his daughter Chi-Chi, because Yamcha isn't off on his own, they don't initially know where she is. No problem, you're thinking. Vegeta and Kakarat both know how to fly. One can go find Chi-Chi while the other goes to get the fan from Roshi. Well, no. Remember how I mentioned that Kakarat is very clingy and Vegeta is very protective? Well, this is the first example of that getting in the way. Bulma does actually make this suggestion, but quickly drops it after getting a death glare from Vegeta and a pair of big scared eyes from Kakarat. It's quickly decided that they would be going together, first to find Chi-Chi, then to find Roshi. When they do find her, she first does the in love thing with Vegeta, who gives her an unamused look before telling Kakarat to explain everything to her and walking off a little ways. I pray to whatever deity might be listening that Kakarat doesn't ever go through a phase like that. Now comes the question of how they get to Roshi's. Well, remember the flying Nimbus? They actually did hang on to that, and now Chi-Chi gets to use it while Kakarat and Vegeta fly alongside her. While they fly, Chi-Chi is bombarding the two Saiyans with a massive questions. She finds these two, especially Kakarat, absolutely fascinating. She had never thought that there could be a girl that not only could fight, but absolutely loved it. When she tries to go into a ramble about how fighting isn't ladylike and that it's only for boys, Kakarat cuts her off. Listen, I may not know about what you've been told about how girls should behave, but in my culture, everyone fights for the sake of what's important to them. Be it pride, loved ones, ideals, everyone is expected to stand up and fight to protect what they care about. It's a display of ultimate dishonor to run away when what you care about is being threatened. Don't ever let anyone tell you you can't fight just because you're a girl. This speech inspires Chi-Chi, who decides to accompany the team on their quest, wanting to become more like Kakarat. It also makes Vegeta very proud. Eventually, they manage to gather most of the Dragon Balls. This is when the Peel-Off gang show up and try to take the balls by force. But Kakarat and Vegeta are easily able to defeat them and get the last Dragon Ball. Since, Kakarat is a lot faster on the uptake in this timeline, and both she and Vegeta would be strong enough to take them out individually, so not much of a problem. When Shenron is summoned, the field is silent for a moment. Bulma has begun to like Yamcha, so she no longer has a wish. Remembering their deal, she looks over to Kakarat and nods. Kakarat steps forward and makes her wish. Shenron? Please, grant my wish. I want to know. My family. My people. Are any of them alive? Shenron is silent for a moment before he answers.
Your father, and all those that fought beside him, were killed by the tyrant Frieza. However, your father was able to save 10% of the Saiyan race, including your mother and brother.
Kakarat's heart swells as tears fill her eyes. All these years she had been trying to convince herself that she and Vegeta were the last of their race, trying to prepare herself for being the queen of a people that no longer exist. But now she's being told that not only are there other Saiyans in the universe, but her mother and brother, whom she barely even remembers, are both alive. As Vegeta places a hand on her shoulder, she turns and buries her face into his chest. She sobs tears of joy and relief as she repeats the one phrase over and over. We're not alone. Seeing the state Kakarat is in, the rest of the team all pile in to give her a group hug. Looking around at the faces of her friends, Kakarat smiles. Once she is calmed down enough to form coherent sentences, Kakarat explains to her friends who she and Vegeta are, including her royal blood, and that her pendant is actually a locket containing a picture of her family and bears her family's royal crest. Everyone is completely thrown for a loop. Bulma is astounded that her two new friends are from outer space. Chi-Chi is gobsmacked by the fact that Kakarat is a princess. Everyone is just having a hard time processing this. That is, until Vegeta explains the reason why they had been sent to Earth in the first place. Now, the gang is pissed. This Vegeta guy had murdered Kakarat's father and 90% of their race? This information fires up all of their friends, at least Bulma, Yamcha, and Chi-Chi, to do everything they can to help Vegeta and Kakarat take this monster out. Chapter 3. The First Tournament. After everyone has recovered from the cry fest that was Vegeta and Kakarat explaining their story, everyone needs to sit down and really think about what they're going to do. Like I said last time, Bulma, Yamcha, and Chi-Chi are all fired up to help the two Saiyans get back at the monster that had destroyed their home and murdered their loved ones. But they're not entirely sure how. Vegeta mentions that he was thinking he and Kakarat should go train with Master Roshi since he did train Master Gohan. This makes Chi-Chi and Yamcha get bolts of inspiration. If they trained with the old master too, they could get stronger and help their friends. Bulma, not knowing what else to do, but knowing she doesn't want to part with her friends after all this new information, decides to tag along. Once they get to Kame House, Roshi gives them his mission of bringing him a hot babe, which both Bulma and Chi-Chi are annoyed by and refuse to help in. Kakarat is also annoyed by this, but then thinks it would be funny to bring a woman that was pretty, but would also clobber Roshi if he tried anything. She gets everyone to huddle in and shares her idea, and everyone thinks it's a good idea too. Yamcha because he also thinks it's funny, and Bulma and Chi-Chi think it might help teach Roshi a lesson. Vegeta and Kakarat, being the only ones that can fly, aside from Chi-Chi, whom they'd given the Nimbus to, go off to find a woman that fit the bill. They soon come across a blonde woman trying to outrun some cars and sidle up next to her. They ask her if she's willing to do them a favor if they help her get away from the people chasing her. When she says yes, Vegeta picks her up while Kakarat grabs her bags. While on their way to Kame House, they explain about Roshi's requirements and that they are hoping she would not only play along, but would also help teach the old goat not to be such a massive pervert. especially since with her being there would be a total of 4 girls living on the island for a time. The woman agrees, looking quite incensed that the old hermit was perving on a girl more than 50 years his junior. She introduces herself as Launch and also tells them about her personality changing quirk, since it could be a problem with their plan to teach Roshi a lesson. When they get back, the plan starts right away, with Launch decking the old hermit before telling him right up front that she is not interested in him. When Roshi tries to get Vegeta and Kakarat to take her away, Launch gives him a death glare. She tells him that she is not going anywhere. She can see that there are 3 young girls here aside from her, and she is going to stick around to make sure Roshi doesn't try to pull anything. It's at this point Krillin shows up and fills his requirements by giving Roshi some dirty magazines. He is actually quite surprised to see that there are so many other students, and each of them taking their training very seriously. He is also intrigued by the fact that 2 of them are girls. He does still act like a jerk to Vegeta sometimes because he sees him as an arrogant tosser, but he begins to warm up to him after seeing how protective and caring he is towards Kakarat, realizing he's not arrogant, just very serious. During the training, Bulma is struck with inspiration when she remembers that Vegeta and Kakarat are from outer space. This makes her realize that they will need a way to get to the stars, or all of this training is not going to mean much. Knowing she doesn't have the resources she needs at Kame House, she bids her friends farewell and heads straight home to begin work on her new mission. During this time, Launch is still keeping her promise to keep Roshi in check and keep the other girls safe, though Roshi isn't interested in them because he sees them as just kids. It's even gotten to the point where blue-haired Launch is acting as a chaperone. This basically makes her the team mom. And because she's always running around following the group to make sure Roshi doesn't try anything, she ends up participating in some of the training. Eventually, the World Martial Arts Tournament rolls around and they all enter. They all want to test how much stronger they've gotten. And due to them all training together and Vegeta being strong naturally, they would all have gained a lot of strength. So much so that the only ones in the tournament that could pose any challenge to them is each other. But no one knows that at first, especially a certain pair of monk bullies. When Krillin's old bullies try to start picking on him, everyone is for quite a shock to the system. The moment Kakarat hears them saying those mean things about one of her friends, she goes into what I'm calling Princess Mode. This is a state Kakarat puts herself in when she feels the need to be Princess Kakarat instead of Son Kakarat. While in Princess Mode, she acts a lot more regal, but also very intimidating. Think the Tranquil Fury trope. Walking up to the 2 bullies, she begins to absolutely rip into them, all the while maintaining the nicest, most calm voice and demeanor. She tells them how pathetic and foolish they are for underestimating an opponent so horrendously, and she will feel no sympathy for them when Krillin humiliates them in the ring. Can you tell I love the Tranquil Fury trope? She then switches out of Princess Mode and turns to Krillin. Krillin, forget what I said earlier. This guy deserves your hardest punch. And we all know what happens there. On to the championship rounds, which is just our heroes and no one else really. Chi-Chi would lose to Kakarat because the Saiyan has been training for longer and Chi-Chi is kind of distracted with wanting to impress her friend and idol. Kakarat recognizes this because Vegeta made sure the Princess of the Saiyans was actually taught observation. Kakarat pulls Chi-Chi aside and tells her that she needs to relax. If she keeps focusing on other things and not the fight that's right in front of her, she's never going to reach her full potential. Chi-Chi is grateful for her friend's words and decides that from now on, she won't let who she's fighting distract her from the fight itself. Yamcha loses to Vegeta, though Yamcha does still give quite a good fight. After Vegeta wins, Yamcha holds out a fist and, after a moment of hesitation, Vegeta gives a small smirk and the 2 fist bump. Krillin gets bested by Jackie Chun, so he doesn't fight either Saiyan and is quite disappointed at that. But he picks up when the 3 of them agree to have their own fight after the tournament is over. The second to last fight is between Vegeta and Kakarat. These 2 are hyped, especially Kakarat. All her life, Vegeta has been the one to protect her, to keep her out of harm. He only allowed her to fight Yamcha that time because he was confident she would win. They had sparred in the past, but they had always ended because someone interrupted. Now, however, they would be able to fight with everything they had. And they do. Kakarat and Vegeta are rather evenly matched. However, Vegeta is older than her by 3 years, and thus a little bit taller than Kakarat. Yeah, he basically wins for the same reason Jackie Chun did in canon. The final battle is between Vegeta and Jackie Chun. This fight is almost as close as the one between him and Kakarat, but due to Vegeta not having the size handicap like Goku did in canon, he does eventually win. Now, this worries Roshi. After all, his whole reason for participating was to show his students that there's always a bigger fish. However, he's surprised when Vegeta brushes off his praise after he meets back up with them after taking off his disguise. Instead, Vegeta states that he still has a long way to go before he's strong enough. Roshi asks what he means, and that's when everyone realizes that Roshi wasn't there when Vegeta and Kakarat explained their backstory. That night, they all go out for dinner, with Vegeta using his winnings to pay for it, and explain to Roshi, Launch, and Krillin about the Saiyans. Understandably, Roshi is feeling a lot of things right now, not the least of which being anger over what his 2 students had lost, but also realizing that he not needed to worry about his students thinking that they were invincible. Though, the reason behind it, he really can't take any joy from them still being motivated. Launch, on the other hand, who was in blonde form at the time, demands that as soon as they get back to Kame House, Roshi is going to start teaching her just as much as the others. She had really become attached to the teens, and again, Team Mom. Grandfather Gohan, who had also come to watch the tournament, expresses pride in his 2 charges at how far they had come. Toward the end of dinner, Kakarat mentions that she was wanting to go look for the 4-star Dragon Ball that Gohan had given her, and asks Bulma if she can borrow the Dragon Radar. Bulma is happy to lend it to her. After all, she's not using it. The topic of Bulma's research comes up, and Bulma explains that the rate of Earth's technological advances is going just too slow, and as a result, she's hit a brick wall. If only that ship you 2 had landed in was still around.
It is.
What? It's probably covered in overgrowth by now, but it should still be okay enough for you to get some use out of it. Why did you never mention this before?
You never asked?
By the end of dinner, it is decided that Vegeta and Kakarat would go look for the Dragon Ball, while Grandfather Gohan took Bulma to the place he'd found them so that she could find their old ship. After wishing his charges luck and telling them to be safe, the gang part ways. Bulma and Gohan to Mount Paozu, Yamcha, Krillin, Chi-Chi, Roshi, and Launch back to Kame House, and Vegeta and Kakarat to find the 4-star ball.
Chapter 4: The Red Ribbon Army.
The Red Ribbon Army arc starts out relatively the same. They find the 6-star ball, beat up the guys threatening them with guns, but unlike the original, Vegeta and Kakarat are more interested in finding out why these people want them. First off, they just pointed guns at them, and while those things don't really work on Saiyans, they are very deadly against other humans. Second, they refuse to tell them why they wanted the balls when asked. If the guns were simply an act of desperation thing, they would have told the Saiyans why they were so desperate. So, something was seriously not right here. This is confirmed when Colonel Silver tries shooting them out of the air with a rocket launcher and then starts trying to interrogate them. Tell me why you're gathering the Dragon Balls.
We could ask the same of you. Only I would add, why are you so desperate to get them that you'd shoot 2 children out of the sky just to get it?
Cheeky brat, aren't you?
No, just not stupid. You said you were part of this Red Ribbon Army? What is that? A gymnastics team?
Yes, Kakarat is very annoyed and is going to be sassing this guy as much as possible. When Silver tries to take their bag, Vegeta and Kakarat start playing keep away with it, just really having fun aggravating Silver after you just shot them out of the sky. Eventually, Silver manages to get the drop on Kakarat and punches her in the gut, knocking the wind out of her, and prompting Vegeta to punch him so hard he goes flying into a wall of the building.
You didn't kill him, right?
No, but he'll be knocked out for a long time. Come on, if these clowns are looking for the balls too, we'll be sure to run into more of them. We'll get answers then. Meanwhile, Bulma finds the pod that Vegeta and Kakarat had landed in and begins trying to remove it from all of the plants that had grown over it. When she finally manages to get it open, she trips and her hand lands on the console. Not noticing, she picks herself up and places the pod in a capsule. What she doesn't know is that she's activated a signal that was now transmitting the pod's location on a very particular frequency. Back with Kakarat and Vegeta, they are now coming up to Jingle Village,
and are very much feeling the cold. So much so that Kakarat, being the younger and smaller of the two, and thus more affected by the cold, passes out mid-flight, causing Vegeta to have to catch her and find them some shelter ASAP. He spots a small girl walking in the snow and lands next to her to ask where the nearest settlement is. We then cut to later when Kakarat is waking up in her house, with Vegeta next to her, very relieved to see her awake. Vegeta fills her in on what happened and hands her some warm clothes that the little girl Suno and her mother had found for her. Vegeta had already changed while he waited for her to wake up. Vegeta and Kakarat explain to Suno and her mother they are looking for the Dragon Balls, and when they ask if the Saiyans are with the RR, they say no. They also ask what they know about the RR because they had already had a run-in with them once and they want to know what their deal is. After being given an explanation, Vegeta and Kakarat conclude that the RR must be planning some kind of take over the world wish, well, like the Pilaf gang had, only, not comically incompetent about it. The two Saiyans promise to kick the RR soldiers stationed here out, so that Jingle Village can live in peace again. As they are about to leave, two RR soldiers show up and Kakarat gets a good line. Just to clarify so I know whose butt I'm about to kick, these two are with the red ribbon, right? Kakarat and Vegeta storm the stronghold, introducing themselves as representatives of Jingle Village, and that they are there to inform Red Ribbon that they have won out their welcome. They are there to make sure that they leave. When General White mocks them about being children and that they'd never be able to stand against the RR, Vegeta just smiles.
Oh, I was so hoping we'd get to do this the hard way.
Just don't go overboard, please. When fighting Metal Jacket, they're able to take him out fairly quickly because they realize that he's a metal man thanks to Vegeta being able to tell how hitting metal feels. So they just focus on wearing him out until he runs out of battery. Hey Veggie, do you think Bol would like this metal man to tinker with?
Doesn't hurt to ask. We'll take him to her when we're done here.
With Purple, Kakarat still has her silly little competition with him, while Vegeta stands in the background wondering why she's humouring the ninja. Until Kakarat smiles at Purple and says that he doesn't seem like the kind of guy that really fits with the RR. That he seems just too nice and fun to belong to something as nasty as an organization that thinks attacking two kids who, from their perspective, seem completely harmless is completely okay. She bets that the RR doesn't even give him any true respect deserving of a ninja. She suggests that he leave the RR and live in Jingle Village. With his skills, she's certain everyone would want to learn from him, and with his friendly competitiveness, he's sure to be very popular. Purple actually looks quite tempted by this offer, but alas, General White chimes in and threatens Purple back into submission. Running up the steps, he tries to sick Android 8 on the Saiyans, only for Android 8 to be Android 8. When Purple pulls out the remote and explains that Android 8 has a bomb in his body, Vegeta grabs it from him before the ninja is even able to finish his threat. With the remote now being held by Vegeta, Kakarat flies forward and punches Purple into a wall, knocking him out. With him now dealt with, they turn to Android 8 and ask why he didn't fight back. When he explains that he's scared of fighting, Kakarat sympathizes, understanding that fighting other living beings, where anything could go wrong at a moment's notice, can be a bit scary. But she thinks that he's still fighting back in his own way. After all, he did stand up to Purple, he just didn't use his fists. When Android 8 introduces himself, Kakarat asks if he likes his name. When he says no, she suggests that he give himself a new name, since the RR clearly aren't good people and didn't want him to have a name outside of a designation. When he can't think of one, he asks the Saiyans to think of one, and Kakarat comes up with the name Yatsuo, which comes from the Japanese word for 8. The fight with the Jiggler goes about the same, only with Vegeta pulling off the freeze plan because he doesn't want a repeat of what happened when they got there. And General White doesn't get a chance to take the man hostage because Vegeta is able to stop him from getting his gun in the first place. Having two Saiyans around is very handy. With all of that done, they go back to Jingle Village where Yatsuo gives them the 2-star ball. They also discover that the Dragon Radar is broken. But this isn't as big of an inconvenience as it is in canon, because they were going to head to Bulma's anyway to give her the Metal Man that they now have in a capsule that they found in the stronghold. When they arrive, Bulma is very excited to see them and is very happy to see that they brought her a present. She explains to them that she started work on the pod and it's not only making her interstellar travel project progress quickly, but it's also helping with several other pet projects of hers too. Upon meeting Bulma's parents and hearing their comments about using the Dragon Balls to find them someone, Vegeta and Kakarat get the feeling that they've just discovered what Bulma was actually going to wish for. Though Kakarat does still ask what making out means, since Vegeta had been keeping her away from those kinds of terms.
I'll tell you when you're older.
The pirate's treasure doesn't change much, just with Kakarat and Vegeta using their noses to follow after Krillin and Bulma, so they catch up before Krillin gets beaten up too much. Also, with both Vegeta and Kakarat fighting, Blue's telekinesis doesn't help him as much, so he loses pretty fast. The only thing that changes is that Launch doesn't try to steal the diamond and is actually preparing some snacks inside the house when Blue shows up. And she's in blue form, so she has the common sense to not run out until he's gone so she can untie everyone. I also can't think of any big changes to Penguin Island, so I'm going to skip it. They eventually find the 4-star ball with Bora, and Kakarat sits down with the man to explain, very politely, the importance the ball had to her. Hearing her out, Bora decides to give the ball back to her without any fuss. She then asks, out of curiosity, what the massive tower was. Bora explains that it's an ancient relic that very few have managed to climb. Cue Mercenary Tao showing up. When he tries to kill Bora, Kakarat and Vegeta are able to save him, with Vegeta catching the spear and Kakarat catching Bora. Remember, they can both fly. They don't need to wait for the Nimbus to come to them first, so their reaction time is much faster. Setting both down on the ground, the two turn to Tao and give him the look. And they're not even Super Saiyans. Tao, shocked that these two children can actually fly, asks just what in the world they are. I am Princess Kakarat de Plant.
And I am Vegeta, protector to the princess.
And we will be your doom. The fight with Tao is not easy. Unlike a lot of other people that the Saiyans have fought, Tao knows to separate them fast and not let them gang up on him. So he breaks out his Dodonpa right away, hitting Kakarat. This sends Vegeta into a frenzy. He thinks that Kakarat is seriously hurt, he's not thinking straight, and so Tao is able to use this to his advantage and knock him out. Taking their bag, Tao leaves. A few minutes later, the two Saiyans wake up, first Kakarat and then Vegeta. Just like in canon, the 4-star Dragon Ball is what saved Kakarat. Knowing that they're going to need some more strength, they decide to climb Korin's tower. There, they meet Korin, who tells them of the sacred water. He explains that they need to take it from him in order to earn it, and so the training begins. When Korin tries to throw Kakarat's pendant over the edge, Vegeta quickly flies to catch it in mid-air and brings it back, much to the relief of Kakarat. He then tells Korin not to try that again if he knows what's good for him. Korin thinks that that might not have been his smartest idea and asks what the pendant is, to which Kakarat explains that it's a memento from her father. Yeah, he definitely messed up. That night, Vegeta is tempted to just take the water while Korin is asleep, only to smile with a soft sigh.
Kakarat would kill me if I cheated.
Eventually, after much training and using teamwork, the Saiyans are able to get the water from Korin, with Kakarat getting him to let go of it and Vegeta quickly moving in to grab it. It is then that Korin reveals to them that the water was just rainwater, and everything they were going through was training. Vegeta and Kakarat are surprised, and they tell Korin that he didn't need to lie to them about the water. They're Saiyans, training is always going to be twice as effective for them. They were only after the water because they thought it would be faster, and they were rather on a time crunch. Speaking of, Tao has just arrived back in the village, and is about to kill Bora and Upa when Vegeta and Kakarat arrive to protect them. This fight is similar to the first, with Tao trying to take out one of the Saiyans with a Dodonpa right away, only to discover that they are both able to take it now. Now, with two strong fighters prepared and able to smash him, he immediately jumps into his Forgive Me trick, only to be met with two very unimpressed looks. Like, really, Kakarat may like to give people second chances, but not if they're already confirmed killers. Realizing that he's not going to trick them, Tao throws the bomb and tries to escape, only for Vegeta to kick the bomb into the air and blow the assassin up. From there, the Saiyans head to where the last two balls they can pick up on their radar are, realizing that it must be the HQ of the RR. This group has caused far too much trouble already. They need to be taken down. On their way, Bulma's drone finds them and the group at Kame House realize where the two are going. While everyone else piles into the plane, Chi-Chi zooms on ahead on the Nimbus. She catches up while they're fighting, surprising the Saiyans. Chi-Chi explains that the others are on their way, to which Vegeta says that they better hurry up if they plan on getting any action. They actually end up doing the job so fast that they are able to get to Commander Red and Officer Black before Red is killed. Enraged, Red rants about how he'd been so close to becoming tall, which then leads to the altercation with Black. But when Black tries to kill him, Kakarat catches the bullet and saves his life. Let me get this straight. You caused all that suffering, who knows how many lost lives, all for something as petty as being tall. Are you serious? Kakarat proceeds to rant about this for a good few minutes, ripping into Red for all the suffering he's caused. Meanwhile, Chi-Chi, Vegeta, and Black are just kind of watching, completely stunned or very happy that they're not on the receiving end of her anger. Kakarat tells him that death is too good for someone like him. She's going to take him to whatever the Earth equivalent to the Galactic Patrol is and make sure that they throw him into the nastiest prison cell they have for the rest of his days. She then turns to Black and says that goes for him too. He is just as guilty for everything that has happened as Red is. At that point, no one really wants to argue with her.
Chapter 5. Family.
After catching up with the others and taking Red and Black to lock up, the group return to Kame House. Vegeta explains that the radar can't seem to pick up the last Dragon Ball, which is very odd. When Bulma asks why they want to find it, they point out that they do nearly have all of them, so might as well. Oolong asks if they even have a wish, to which Kakarat does, though she's not sure if it'll work. But hey, doesn't hurt to try. Roshi suggests that they speak to his sister Baba. Before heading off, Kakarat and Vegeta get new gis, this time with the Saiyan Royal crest on the back. When they get there, the whole competition is explained and Kakarat agrees, saying that she'll fight alone. The others protest while Kakarat tries to reason that this was her wish and she couldn't drag them into it. Vegeta is the one that manages to talk some sense into her, telling her that they're her friends, that her wish is theirs and they will help fight for it. She's not dragging them into anything, they want to help. Wow, Vegeta being the voice of reason and friendship, that's something you don't see every day. Kakarat agrees and the group decide to take turns. First up is Krillin vs Dracula, and here Krillin wins, managing to knock the vampire out of the ring with a powerful Kamehameha. Remember, everyone in the Dragon team is trying to get stronger than anything on Earth to take out an intergalactic tyrant capable of blowing up planets. So yeah, everyone's going to be quite a bit tougher here. Next up is the Invisible Man, who Yamcha decides to fight. Using what he's learnt, he listens for the man and fights back. When Baba tries the singing trick, Yamcha calls her out for cheating and interfering. If her fighters can't win on their own strength, then Baba is nothing but a fraud. Oh, Baba did not like that one bit, but at the same time, he is right. And when Roshi chimes in agreeing with Yamcha, Baba really can't argue. In the end, Yamcha claims victory. Next up is Bandages, who is taken on by Vegeta. This isn't a difficult fight. When Bandages tries to throw Vegeta off of the bridge, he just flies back up, surprising Bandages. And when he uses his bandages to stop himself from falling off too, Vegeta realizes that the only way to win is to knock Bandages out, which he quickly does. Next up is Chi-Chi vs Devil, and it's a foregone conclusion. Chi-Chi can ride the Nimbus, so Devil's signature attack? It does nothing. It is now time for the last fighter, who Kakarat says she'll fight. Baba smiles and calls in a tall man with spiky black hair, a fox mask, and a Saiyan tail. Kakarat is shocked. There had been another Saiyan on Earth this whole time? But Vegeta has the very distinct feeling that he's met this man before. and has a horrible feeling he might be right. Moving the fight to the outdoor arena, the man tells Kakarat that all she needs to do is remove his mask and she will win the fight. The fight goes on for several minutes, and Kakarat gets the feeling that the man is going easy on her. Almost like he's coaching her, pointing out the gaps in her technique, giving non-verbal corrections. Eventually, however, she does manage to remove the mask, and seeing the man's face, she freezes. She knew that face. She saw it every time she looked inside her locket.
Father?
Bardock smiles, and only now does everyone see the halo above his head. You've gotten very strong, Kakarat. You've made your old man proud. Kakarat's eyes well with tears as she launches herself at her father, her arms wrapping tightly around him in a hug. Bardock chuckles, teasing his daughter a little by asking what kind of Saiyan starts crying at the drop of the hat, before turning to Vegeta. He tells him that he's been doing a magnificent job of protecting and training Kakarat. He couldn't have found a better protector for her if he tried. When Kakarat stops crying, she explains to Bardock her plan to use the Dragon Balls to bring back the Saiyans that died when Planet Plant was destroyed back to life. Bardock thinks it's a good plan, but not the best time. He tells Kakarat that the reason Frieza hasn't been able to wipe out the rest of the Saiyans yet is because they're too spread out. If there was suddenly a whole mass of them in one location, it would set off a big warning for the tyrant. No, Kakarat needed to wait for the right moment to bring them back. His Saiyans that were still hanging around in Otherworld will keep training so that they'll be ready for when that time comes. It's at this point Baba chips in and explains that the Dragon Balls can only be used to bring back more than one life if they all died under similar circumstances and they died less than a year ago. Well, so much for that. But they did still win, so Baba grants their wish and finds the last of Dragon Ball. Vegeta and Kakarat go to get it from the Pilaf gang, and when they get back, they really don't know what to do. They don't have any wishes, but they can't keep all of the balls in the one place. That's just asking for trouble. They decide to split the balls up between them. Chi-Chi takes one to her father to hold on to, one goes with Roshi to Kame House, one goes with Bulma to Capsule Corp, one goes to Korin in his tower, one stays with Baba, Kakarat holds on to the 4-star ball, and one goes with Gohan. They all meet up at Kame House, and Roshi explains that they should all go their separate ways and train on their own. Kakarat is very hesitant. Remember, she's very clingy with those she cares about, due to living so long believing that everything from her past except for Vegeta was completely gone. There has never been a time where he hasn't been by her side. But even as she's worrying about this, she realizes that this is all the more reason she has to do this. She's the Saiyan princess. She can't always depend on Vegeta being there. Even if what he does for her is mostly emotional support and giving her a feeling of stability, she can't rely on him doing that for her indefinitely. There will be times where he won't be there, and she needs to learn to deal with it. She thinks in all the times where splitting up might have helped, when they met Chi-Chi with the Red Ribbon Army, would things have gotten fixed a lot faster if they had just split up? Vegeta is launching into a massive tirade at Roshi about how it's his job to protect Kakarat and how he can't do that if he's not with her. But Kakarat places a hand on his arm and smiles at him. She explains to Vegeta her thought process and that really they both need to do this. They both need to learn how to be without the other, because really, even if they always find each other again, there will be times where they need to be in two places at once. Vegeta reluctantly concedes this point, and they all go off on their training trips. When the 22nd World Tournament rolls around, everyone meets up. Vegeta and Kakarat embrace in a hug, having missed each other a lot during their training trips. Bulma tells the two that she's been studying the pod that the two had landed in and is currently working on the gravity manipulation aspects of the pod's features. The tournament proceeds, with Chi-Chi fighting against Vegeta this time, Kakarat up against Krillin, and Yamcha against Tien. First things first, Yamcha loses to Tien, and Krillin loses to Kakarat. Though Krillin does give her a bit of a workout. For the fight between Vegeta and Chi-Chi, Chi-Chi does lose, but she does much better this time than she did against Kakarat. Once the fight is over, she walks up to Vegeta and pulls him into a hug, completely throwing him for a loop. Chi-Chi leans in and whispers into his ear, "You take care of Kakarat, you hear? Don't ever make her cry." Vegeta is very confused now. And because he's confused, he's also distracted. This wouldn't be a problem if he was fighting against Kakarat, as she would stop the fight to call him to stop letting his thoughts distract him and focus on the fight. But he's not fighting Kakarat. He's fighting Tien, and he has no issue with using Vegeta's distraction to his advantage. So, Vegeta gets thrown out of the ring. Tien would have killed him if he knew he was part of the Turtle School, but he is still wearing his gi with the Saiyan crest. Kakarat, while sad that she won't get to fight Vegeta, is madder at Tien for playing dirty and not letting Vegeta sort out his thoughts or telling him to focus. Add to that the fact that he and Chaozu had nearly killed many people, she really goes all out on him. Tien is shocked that this little girl is so strong and has to give her his respect. And after Vegeta saves Chaozu, him as well. Unfortunately, that night when they're all trying to enjoy their dinner, Grandfather Gohan is killed by Tambourine when he goes to get Vegeta's power pole from the tournament grounds. Kakarat and Vegeta are horrified. This was the man that had found them when they first arrived on Earth, the man that had taken them in and raised them as his own, and now he was dead. Aside from Grandfather Gohan being the one to be killed, the events of the King Piccolo saga play out rather similarly. However, the fight is a lot shorter because he has 2 very pissed off Saiyans gunning for his blood, not just one. And they are a lot stronger than Goku was at this point. Also, because of the places where they'd hidden the Dragon Balls, Piccolo doesn't get to make himself young again. All of this added up means that neither get hurt to the point that they need to retreat, and Piccolo has to make Piccolo Jr.'s egg a lot faster, possibly affecting how Piccolo Jr. turns out. Kakarat and Vegeta go to the lookout to revive Gohan and everyone else killed by Piccolo and his children, and while there, Kami requests that they train with him. They agree and thus begin their time training with Kami. Eventually, the 23rd tournament comes and Vegeta and Kakarat arrive, now fully grown adults, absolutely shocking their friends. Krillin immediately goes up to Vegeta and asks who she takes more after, her mum or her dad. To which Vegeta chuckles and says that she's the perfect mix of both. The tournament starts, and for the last time in the original manga, I'm only going to go over the important fights. First off, Chi-Chi vs Kakarat. At long last, Chi-Chi can show her best friend and idol how far she's come. And she can show her father, who is in the stands watching, just how serious she is about helping her friends fight this power-hungry tyrant that murdered Kakarat's people. This time she does a lot better. She's actually focusing on the fight and not who she's fighting outside of keeping an eye out for particular moves. However, Kakarat does still defeat her, knocking her out of the ring. When the fight is over, Kakarat helps Chi-Chi up and pulls her into a hug. "I'm so proud of you, Chi-Chi." That is the single best thing Chi-Chi could have heard in that moment. In the semi-finals, it's Vegeta and Kakarat. Just before the fight is set to start, Vegeta pulls Kakarat over for a private talk. He tells her that this isn't going to be an ordinary tournament battle. This is going to be an official Saiyan proving match. One idea I saw in a Dragon Ball fanfic, which I think makes a lot of sense for the Saiyan culture, is that if a Saiyan wants to be with another, they need to defeat the other in a fight. Considering how ingrained fighting is in Saiyans, it makes complete sense. Yeah, Vegeta basically just gave Kakarat the Saiyan equivalent of a marriage proposal. Now, I should probably explain why Vegeta would do this, and it's basically that he recognizes that Kakarat is a beautiful woman and that there will be guys wanting to date her. He also knows that if he didn't try and prove to himself that she's way out of his league, his overprotectiveness and own feelings would probably make him scare away any male that so much as flirted with her. Vegeta does not think that he's going to win here. This is his way of letting go of an impossible crush. Once the match starts, both Kakarat and Vegeta are giving their absolute all. It goes on so long and the arena is so damaged that Piccolo Jr. is beginning to think that they might do his job for him. However, just as it looks like there's going to be no winner, Kakarat smiles, turns around, and steps out of the ring. The whole audience is stunned, but no more so than Vegeta. He goes running after her as she disappears around the corner toward the backstage area. He asks her why she did that, why she just stepped out of the ring and let him take the victory. Kakarat smiles and turns to him, placing her hands on either side of his face. I don't need you to beat me to know what I want, Vegeta. You don't need to prove your strength to me or anyone. I've known you longer than I've known I'm a princess. I trust you more than anything in the universe. And just for the record, I'm choosing you because of who you are, not because we're both Saiyans. If I wanted to be with a human, I'd be with a human. And if I want to be with you, I'll be with you. Anyone who says different can go die in a ditch. With that, Vegeta swiftly pulls her in for a hug. Their friends, whom had been watching, all shout and cheer, saying that they'd always known those two would get together eventually. Finally, it is the match between Piccolo Jr. and Vegeta. Just as the battle starts, Piccolo shocks both Vegeta and Kakarat by revealing that he'd sealed Kami in a jar before swallowing it. He also says that as soon as he's done with Vegeta, he's going to take his time torturing Kakarat before he kills her. Vegeta, knowing that he can't do any significant damage to Piccolo without risking Kami's life, uses his superior speed and his ability to fly to avoid damage while he tries to think of a plan. His attention is soon caught, however, by Kakarat waving frantically at him. She points to her mouth, hanging wide open, before pointing to Piccolo, then spreading her arms wide. Understanding what she's trying to tell him, Vegeta begins to goad Piccolo into using his size-changing ability. As soon as Piccolo does, Kakarat flies into his mouth and retrieves Kami. Now, without anything holding him back, Vegeta quickly defeats Piccolo, saying that he should not have threatened his wife. Before he's able to deal the killing blow, however, Kakarat stops him. Reminding Vegeta that if Piccolo died, Kami died, Kakarat gives Piccolo a senzu bean. She then tells him that he should not waste this second chance, and do something better with his life than chasing after the shadow of a man that only viewed his children as tools. Now that the whole Piccolo Jr. mess is over, the whole gang go to Gohan's home in the mountains to have Vegeta and Kakarat's wedding. Bulma is maid of honor, of course, with Chi-Chi as bridesmaid and grandfather Gohan leading her down the aisle. Krillin as best man, with Tien and Yamcha as groomsmen, and Chaozu is the ring bearer.
Interlude. Back before Planet Plant was destroyed by Frieza, Guinea and Raditz lived in the castle. Bardock was often busy with being the king, so Raditz was mostly raised by his mother. Bardock still took time out of his day to be with his family, but yeah, he did still have an entire planet to run and a rebellion to plan. When Raditz found out that he was going to be a big brother, he didn't know how to take it at first. It wasn't often that Saiyan's siblings actually got to grow up together, which, from his perspective at the time, was what was going to happen. Guinea then tells her son that big brothers are born first so they can become stronger and defend their little siblings from any danger. Remember, this is Guinea, and this is something she'd definitely say. She also reminds Raditz that he is the crowned prince and the heir to the throne. He has a responsibility to not only grow stronger physically, but mentally and emotionally, so that he can protect everyone. If you've ever heard the song Cost of the Crown, link down below, that's basically the message that Guinea is trying to imprint on Raditz. As a result of this, Raditz doesn't ignore or just forget that he has a little sibling. Quite the opposite, in fact. He goes out of his way to check on her while she's still in her nursing pod, just to make sure that she's okay. It gets to the point that he actually feels a little anxious when he's not in the same room as her because Kakarat's power is very small at this time, and that kind of made her a sitting duck. So when Raditz hears that Bardock has assigned someone to watch her 24/7, Raditz is very relieved. He still checks on his sister, and through this, ends up getting to know her new protector. Raditz and Vegeta actually become somewhat friendly. not exactly friends, since Vegeta is always really formal, but they do get along, and Raditz even covers for Vegeta when he needs to duck out of the room for whatever reason. Regardless, having Vegeta there definitely sets Raditz's mind at ease. Gine also becomes quite fond of the young protector, often bringing him some personally made snacks. Remember how Gine was a cook in the original timeline? Well, she still was, right up until Bardock decided to make her his queen, screw what everyone else says, and still enjoys cooking. Through all of this, Gine is very much aware of what Bardock is planning. So, when Bardock says that the time has come for her and Raditz to go into hiding, she isn't all that surprised. What makes her hesitate is the fact that her daughter won't be coming with them because she's still in her nursing pod at the time. However, Bardock reminds her that the pods can only carry about 2 people at most anyway. Also, having the entire royal family go to the same place at the same time would paint a massive target on their backs, which is exactly what he's trying to prevent in the first place. He assures Gine that when he sends Kakarat to her hiding place with Vegeta, he will activate the pod's internal tracking system so that Gine and Raditz will be able to find them. Placated, Gine and Raditz leave their home planet and go out into the stars. It isn't long after that they hear of the destruction of Planet Plant, the death of King Bardock, and the disappearance of the rest of the royal family. Gine tried frantically to pick up the signal of a Saiyan pod with the scouter that she'd brought with her, a scouter that's had its communication functions removed. But try as she might, she gets nothing. Gine and Raditz are left with but one conclusion. Kakarat, Vegeta, and Bardock had all died on Planet Plant together. Both of them are devastated. Remember, Gine had always been very caring and attached to her children, and in this timeline, Raditz had developed a strong sense of responsibility and care for his little sister, and an almost friendship with Vegeta, so this is a hard pill to swallow. For the next several years, the 2 surviving family members move from planet to planet, never staying in one place for too long, and always keeping their tails hidden so as not to attract too much attention. During this, they are also training and trying to get stronger. Yes, even Gine. Why? Well, it should be rather obvious. Even if Gine doesn't like to fight, and was never really any good at it, they are on their own out here. She needs to get as strong as she can so she can protect who she believes is the last member of her family. Same for Raditz. The years pass by like this without any significant change. Until one day, when Gine's old scouter starts to ping. Gine had kept it because it was one of the last things they had from their home, and she had a feeling that its power reading functions might come in handy, which it has. It's very old, and the scouter technology of the Empire has completely left it behind, but it served them well. And on this day, a day that seemed pretty average, it began to ping. Gine, surprised and not knowing what's going on, picks up the scouter and looks at what's on the tiny screen. There, clear as day, is a set of coordinates. For a moment, Gine thinks it might be a glitch, but when she looks up the coordinates, she discovers that they lead to a planet. She checks what frequency is being used and her heart stops. This is a frequency that hasn't been used since Planet Plant was destroyed. It's from a Saiyan pod. Gine and Raditz discuss this and try to figure out what's going on and what they're going to do. They come to the conclusion that this must be a Saiyan survivor, either a Saiyan that's just come into trouble or a child that's only just figured out how to get the pod's tracking system to work. But they do believe it's a fellow Saiyan in need of help. So, noting down the coordinates, they get to work to earn enough money to buy a small ship and head to that planet. After so long being alone, any company from a fellow Saiyan will be very welcome. It will take them quite some time to get enough money to buy a ship and then to actually reach the planet, but they're determined. Once they have everything they need, they will be embarking for the planet known as Earth. Chapter 6 Reunion. Unlike the original timeline, the Dragon team don't lose touch with each other during the 5-year time skip. In fact, they keep in close contact, even having monthly get-togethers at Kame House, which they call Family Day. Bulma and Yamcha have broken up, but in this version of events, it was a lot more amicable and they remain friends after, with no lasting damage to the bond the team shares. At one of their family days, a year after their wedding, Vegeta and Kakarat announce that they're going to have a baby. Yep, by popular demand, Gohan II is born as in canon. However, as this Gohan is the son of Vegeta and Kakarat instead of Goku and Chi-Chi, he is quite a bit different. For a start, he's not as shy and quiet as his canon counterpart. Since he's being raised by basically the whole Dragon team, he's a lot more confident, sociable, and outspoken. He's also a good bit stronger than Gohan in canon, as he is the son of Vegeta and Kakarat. Plus, martial arts are a big thing in his family, including its human members, so it's bound to rub off on him. Also, unlike his canon counterpart, Gohan is going to be going to school as soon as he's old enough. Unlike canon Gohan, who was homeschooled until he was a teenager. Vegeta already knows how hard it is to homeschool someone, having helped homeschool Kakarat, and they've also come to realize that homeschooling has its drawbacks. For one, you don't really get to practice your social skills with others your own age. And with how talkative this Gohan is, that simply won't do. So they've got his name down for a school in West City. And with Bulma's insistence on paying for it, it's one of the very high-end ones. Also, unlike Ken and Gohan, who'd wanted to blend into the background, this Gohan is a leader. His friendly and confident manner, his natural talents at physical activities, and his work ethic when it comes to his studies would all make him quite popular. In high school, he's probably going to become the class representative. He wouldn't even be given a hard time for his tail. Also, yes, I'm sticking with the name Gohan. Why? Well, since the main character is the Saiyan princess, I like to think that we would be able to get some nice world building about the Saiyan culture. So I'm going to be adding my own personal headcanons like I did with Vegeta's proposal. With this, in Saiyan culture, there is a long-standing tradition of naming children after great warriors, especially warriors that the parent who's doing the naming holds a debt of gratitude towards. So, when Vegeta and Kakarat were trying to think of names for their son, they decided to name him after the man that had taken them in after they landed on Earth all those years ago. Piccolo also joined the group during the time jump. Due to the rushed nature of his birth in this version of events, Piccolo Sr. wasn't able to impart as many of his memories into Junior. The only memory that came through clearly was Vegeta and Kakarat being responsible for Senior's death. As a result, Kakarat's speech at the end of Chapter 5 hit him harder than it would have the original Piccolo. After some thought and a lot of work on the part of Kakarat, he ends up joining the group. He actually becomes Gohan's de facto babysitter. Roshi is still an appreciator of beauty, but has learned to cut down on the requests for panty shots and such, and more just enjoys a beautiful woman's company. In fact, he's learned that he quite enjoys being able to talk to a woman without offending her. Launch and Bulma weren't the first to sock him one when he tried his old stuff, they were just the first ones to make it stick. So Roshi's not going to be at risk of sexual harassment charges anymore. Just give him an alcoholic beverage, a pretty lady who's a pleasant conversationalist, and he's all good. He and Launch are even drinking buddies. Now, as for power levels, I'm going to say everyone's around 1000 to 2000, with Vegeta and Kakarat being the highest. Gohan is the exception to this with a power level of 20, since he is still only 4 and his parents want him to have a childhood and not just be constantly training. As for Genie and Raditz, they would be around the 5000 mark by the time of the 5-year skip. Speaking of, let's jump to the full 5 years later. Far from Kame House, a stout farmer is tending his fields when a strange craft zooms overhead, coming to land at the far end of his farm. Shocked, the farmer hastily makes his way to where it landed. There, he finds a man and woman who are fiddling with a strange device. Noticing him standing there, the woman apologizes for landing their ship on his land, while the man continues to mess with the device. She assures the farmer that they mean no harm and are simply looking for someone. At that moment, the man gives a shout of triumph, attaching the device to the side of his head. Promising to come get their ship off his land later, the two fly off, leaving behind a very confused farmer. After a few minutes, they come across Piccolo, who had been on his way to Kame House for the annual family day. The two strangers are surprised to see a Namekian and ask if he's seen any Saiyans in the area. Before Piccolo can recover from his shock, the male says that there's a large group of high power levels. Forgetting all about Piccolo, they fly off at top speed towards the group. For a few moments, Piccolo just stands there completely stunned, but then he realizes the direction they're going and takes off after them. They're heading for Kame House. Meanwhile, Kakarat, Vegeta, Grandfather Gohan, and Gohan are arriving at Kame House with several large fish for the family day barbecue. Touching down, they are happily greeted by their little found family. Their dragon family, if you will. While Kakarat and Vegeta help with the food, they ask Roshi to help watch Gohan, which he is very happy to do. He loves being Grandpa Roshi. For a few minutes, the family talk and catch up, and Yamcha and Chi-Chi tell everyone that they've started dating, earning a round of congratulations. Just as they're about to move on to a new topic, all of the adult fighters snap their heads to look in the same direction. All of them could sense a powerful energy coming their way. Not looking away from the direction of the energy, Kakarat asks Bulma to take Gohan inside. Not even a moment after Bulma pulls a reluctant Gohan through the door, a man and woman touch down on the sand before them. For several minutes, there's complete silence as the two strangers stare at Kakarat and Vegeta, and they stare back. With a shaking hand, Kakarat opens her locket and holds it up to compare the image of the woman and little boy in the picture to the woman and man before her. The first to break the silence is the woman, who speaks with a trembling voice. Kakarat? Mother? Brother? All at once, the reality of the situation hits the Saiyans and big smiles come to their faces. The newly reunited mother and siblings embrace. Even Raditz is fighting back tears. After a few minutes, they separate and Vegeta steps forward. He bows to Guinea and Raditz, greeting them as Your Highnesses, only to be lightly smacked over the back of the head by Kakarat, who reminds him that he's royalty now too. Guinea and Raditz are stunned for a few seconds before Raditz bursts out laughing.
Well, at least she married someone we know.
It's at this point that Gohan walks up, having gotten away from Bulma. Seeing his mum and dad talking to the strangers, he can tell that they don't mean any harm. So, walking up to his parents, he tugs on their geese before asking who the strangers are. Suddenly remembering where they are, Kakarat picks up Gohan before motioning to Guinea and Raditz to follow. Walking back over to the Earthlings, Kakarat and Vegeta begin introductions, including Piccolo, who had arrived when the mother and siblings were hugging. Meanwhile, on the other side of the planet, a spherical pod is crashing to the ground. Once the dust settles, a tall, bald Saiyan steps out. Nappa is not very happy right now. It had been nearly a year since the last time he'd had to do the job that he hates. He had been hoping that the last time would be the last time. But here he is, hunting down his own kind in hopes of saving his own skin from Frieza. Heaving a sigh, he activates his scouter. After a few minutes, it locks onto a group of high power levels. That probably meant a family. Those ones were always the worst. Hearing another sigh, he begins to slowly make his way over to where the power levels are, proverbially dragging his feet. Back over with the Dragon family, they are all enjoying their barbecue and getting to know Guinea and Raditz. Guinea is thrilled to be a grandmother and hasn't stopped trying to smother an embarrassed Gohan in affection. Raditz, on the other hand, is surprised that they only have one, to which Vegeta explains that they were waiting for Gohan to be old enough to do most things on his own before giving him a little sibling. After some time, the conversation turns to just how strong Guinea and Raditz are compared to the Dragon family, whom, might I remind you, have been training to one day take down Frieza. There is a few seconds of confusion as to why this happened, until Guinea points out that Earth's gravity is very light. After explaining what she means, Bulma is immediately calling up her dad to start looking into building some kind of gravity room for the ship, all the while cursing herself for not thinking of it. When the Earthlings ask why Kakarat and Vegeta never brought it up, they remind everyone that they landed on Earth when they were very young. They barely even remember Planet Plant, let alone such a minor detail. Before they are able to continue their lunch, the Dragon family sense another powerful energy coming their way, and the old scouter that Guinea and Raditz had brought is going haywire. It's strong, but not quite as strong as Guinea and Raditz. But the thing that really confuses them is that it's moving very slowly. Oh great, what now? No one moves for a moment as they all tense for a fight. But when the energy doesn't seem to be moving any faster, Kakarat suggests that they just finish their lunch. So, while keeping a close eye on the approaching energy, they all finish their lunch. They even have time to clean up. Finally, a tall bald man wearing a scouter and a Frieza uniform touches down in front of them. Heaving an exhausted sigh, he looks up only for his jaw to immediately hit the floor.
You...
Nappa? You know this guy, Mother? He was a member of the Royal Guard before everything. Guinea begins to ask Nappa questions about why and how he's here, and why he's wearing Frieza Force armor. For a few moments, Nappa stands there, unable to speak or move. The Queen and 2 heirs are standing right before him, hale, healthy, and, if his scouter had been reading right, plenty strong. The gears begin turning in his head, and he is struck with the thought that, if they are alive, there might still be hope for the Saiyan race. The Saiyans have been scattered and disorganized, unable to do much of anything except hide from Frieza. But, with the royal family alive, they would have a rallying point. They could rebuild, but if Frieza found out about them... Snapping out of his dazed stupor, Nappa destroys the scouter before telling his queen the truth. He had been off-world with a broken scanner when Frieza sent out the order to return to Planet Plant, so he hadn't known about the planet's destruction until he was captured on his return flight. The only way he could avoid being killed was by making a deal. Frieza would let him live if he hunted down surviving Saiyans. While he was sometimes able to hide some of the survivors, that wasn't always the case. In the case of families, he would often need to kill the older ones so that the little ones could live. It was a very delicate balancing act, and not one that was always accepted by those that he was sent after. To Nappa's surprise, the young princess is the one to step forward. She tells Nappa that what he did was making the best out of a bad situation. If anyone other than Nappa had been sent, they would have killed every Saiyan they found without question. The fact that Nappa was able to use his circumstances to save even a few showed that he still had honor. He was still a Saiyan warrior. Smiling, Nappa bows deeply to his princess before telling them of Dodoria and Zarbon. Frieza had told him long ago that if Nappa ever fell in battle, Frieza would send these two to finish the job for him. With his scouter now destroyed, Frieza will assume that he's either dead or gone rogue. Either way, Zarbon and Dodoria would be coming. The royal family thank him for the warning and tell him that they will figure out a plan. When Kakarat suggests that Nappa remain on Earth with them to have a normal life after everything he's gone through, Nappa declines. He explains that he still remembers where all of the Saiyans that he'd been able to hide were, and he has leads on others, which he'd been able to avoid going after previously. He's going to get in contact with these other Saiyans and inform them of the family being alive. With the knowledge that their leaders had survived, their hope and fighting spirit will return.
When the time is right, send us a signal. We'll rally at your call. Until then, may the moon grant you strength.
With that, Nappa takes his leave. Returning to his pod, he launches up into the sky and away from Earth. For the first time in years, he feels his warrior fire burning within him. He feels alive. Back with the Dragon family, they are discussing what to do about these new enemies, and Bulma points out that the first thing they need is to know how long it will take them to get there. This is when Piccolo suggests that they talk to Kami, surprising everyone. Despite the fact that Piccolo had been accepted into the Dragon family, he and Kami have never really been able to see eye to eye. So him suggesting that they go to Kami for help is quite surprising. Still, it's a solid suggestion, so with that, all of them fly up to Lookout to talk to Kami. Sadly, Kami isn't that well versed in the greater universe, or even Frieza and his goons. Most of his knowledge about that came from Kakarat and Vegeta, and them being so young when they landed on Earth, their knowledge was limited. Luckily, he is able to get in contact with King Kai, and with his help, they're able to estimate that Zarbon and Dodoria will be arriving on Earth in about 1 year's time, if their speed remains consistent. While he's at it, he also gets in contact with King Yema and requests special permission for one of the Dragon family to train with King Kai. When he informs the Dragon family of this, everyone agrees that Kakarat should be the one to go, only for Kakarat's clinginess to kick in. Yeah, Kakarat never was able to completely break herself of her clingy tendencies. She just got better at handling it. She argues that she's not going without Vegeta. They trained together with Roshi, Korin, and Kami. This was not going to break their streak. Upon hearing about the husband and wife's desire to train together, Yema's inner romantic comes out and he agrees to let both of them go to Otherworld on the condition that Kami help with the extra paperwork. Remember, Yami is, or at least was, married to Princess Snake, so he's got to have at least a little bit of a romantic in him. Kakarat asks everyone to keep an eye on Gohan and tells his son not to cause any trouble for his aunties, uncles, or grandparents. Gohan rolls his eyes but says that he won't. Before they leave, Kakarat suggests that Kami let the family use the Room of Spirit and Time for their own training. Kami understandably protests, as the RST is not for the faint of heart. But Kakarat points out that they're all much stronger and older than she and Vegeta had been when they went in for the first time. Even if the room is grueling, she and Vegeta had still been able to be in there for 4 real-world hours. Kami concedes a point but says that he won't be letting any of the Dragon family in there unless they prove that they can handle it. Kakarat agrees and she and Vegeta head off to Otherworld. Chapter 7 Training Arc. Upon arriving in Otherworld, the husband and wife are greeted by Yema, who tells them that they better appreciate all the trouble he and Kami are going through to get both of them to train with King Kai. To his surprise, Kakarat does show him a great deal of respect and gratitude, which he wasn't expecting considering how she was acting earlier. Once Vegeta and Kakarat arrive at Snake Way, they thank the guide for bringing them before lifting off the ground. Wanting to make the trip more fun and go by faster, they decide to make it a little race. First one to get to the tail buys dinner. Back on Earth, the Dragon family, now including Gine and Raditz, are training on the lookout with Kami. So far, none of them have gone into the Room of Spirit and Time yet, but they are quickly getting to the point where Kami thinks they might be able to handle it. However, while the adults are training, one member of the Dragon family is being left out, much to his frustration. Gohan has practically begged his human aunts and uncles to let him train with them. The Earth is his home too, he should be able to protect it and his family. But Chi-Chi, Yamcha, and Krillin all turn him down with varying levels of empathy, and tell the others to do the same. They tell Gohan that he's just a little kid, and he has preschool. This is something for the adults to handle. But if you think that Gohan is just going to take that lying down, you are sorely mistaken. After realizing that his aunts and uncles aren't going to listen, Gohan begins to sneak around to the lookout when no one is looking. Every day after preschool, he would be picked up by one of the Dragon family and taken up to lookout so that he wasn't home alone. Then, when everyone else is engrossed in their training, Gohan would hide in the area to observe them, analyzing how they move and how each technique works. Then he would train on his own, working through everything that he'd been watching. This goes on for about a week before he's caught by Raditz and Piccolo. But to his surprise, neither of them are mad. In fact, it's quite the opposite. They are grinning with nods of approval. Now there's the tenacity I like to see. Raditz had never liked the idea of not letting his nephew train with them. Even if he couldn't match their power levels, he still needed to be able to defend himself. Piccolo had also been displeased with the idea, but for a different reason. He's seen what Vegeta and Kakarat can do, and this is their son. Clearly the boy has to have potential. From that day on, Raditz and Piccolo are the ones picking up Gohan from daycare. When asked why, Raditz gives the excuse that he is the strongest one here besides his mother, and he wants to get to know his nephew. The Dragon family only need one of them to help out all the time. And this way, he can just take Gohan straight home. He pretends not to notice his mother's knowing smile. As for Piccolo, he simply points out that he's a Namekian and that he doesn't need rest the same way everyone else does. He can take Gohan home, keep an eye on him until it's the next person's turn, and then train after. Forcing the boy to go to the lookout every day wasn't very fair. So, if they're not going to the lookout, where are they going? Well, to Capsule Corp. Now, while I haven't been able to get an exact answer as to how long the gravity chamber took to be built, from what I could find, it took something like a month. And that was completely from scratch, neither Briefs nor Bulma having dealt with this kind of tech before. So, with the Briefs family having been messing with Saiyan tech and Red Ribbon Army tech ever since the original Dragon Ball, yeah, I'd say they could do it in about a week. At first, the group are sneaking in order to use the chamber for training, not knowing if Bulma would hold the same sentiments as Yamcha, Chi-Chi, and Krillin. But one afternoon, Raditz and Gohan walk in to find her already there tinkering with the main control panel. Oh, there you are, boys! I gotta say, you've really been helping me iron out the kinks in this thing, with how often you've been using it. I couldn't ask for better beta testers. Raditz and Gohan are completely stunned. Bulma had known about them using the chamber? For how long? And why hasn't she told the others? Bulma smiles and explains. I've known Kakarat and Vegeta the longest, aside from Grandpa G. I know they would want their little boy prepared to fight if need be. Besides, he's their son. He's got stubbornness from both ends of the gene pool. I knew he'd try training on his own. This way, he has someone to make sure he's not making a mistake that could get him hurt. Meanwhile, back on Snake Way, Kakarat and Vegeta come across a nice-looking palace. The smell of food is wafting out of the open door, and as they are still alive and thus do get hungry, they decide to stop in and ask if they can maybe have a meal. To their surprise, the palace is actually some kind of restaurant, staffed entirely by women, who happily lead them to a table. As they sit down, they soon become unhappy witnesses to a blue ogre shouting and acting aggressive towards the staff. Quickly getting irritated at the ogre, Kakarat tells him, in a way that is strangely both polite and menacing, to stop treating the staff like that and to let them wait other customers, as he clearly has more than enough on his plate. The ogre doesn't take too kindly to that and attempts to attack her, only to be stopped by Vegeta with almost no effort. Grabbing onto the ogre's shirt, Vegeta drags him to the door before throwing him out. Then, he turns and walks back to his and Kakarat's table as if nothing had happened. At hearing Kakarat's giggle, he looks over at her with a raised eyebrow. My hero. They share a laugh and order their food, which is quickly brought to them by a waitress, who thanks them for dealing with the ogre. As they tuck into their meals, they are soon approached by a woman with curly hair and a regal air to her. She thanks them for handling the ogre, as he had been making quite a nuisance of himself all day. She then tells them that their meals will be on the house today before asking their names. Upon hearing Vegeta and Kakarat's names, her eyes light up and she introduces herself as Princess Snake. She then takes a seat with them, telling Kakarat that she knows her father. After his death, he and his warriors had stopped off at her inn a few times, and she considered him quite a good friend. The three royals spend the meal talking, and when it's done, Snake gives the couple a bag of food to tide them over until they get to Kai's place. Back on Earth, Gohan is flourishing under his Uncle Raditz and Uncle Piccolo. He's even managed to figure out both the Masenko and the Shining Friday. During this training, Bulma has also been helping out by bringing refreshments and snacks for them to have on their breaks. And during this, she also tells Raditz and Gohan stories of the adventures that she'd had with Kakarat and Vegeta. Raditz also opens up and tells both his nephew and Bulma about some of the happy memories he has of growing up with his mother and some of the few memories he has of when Kakarat was a baby. Even before she was out of her pod, she was attached to Vegeta. Really should have seen that as a sign. Meanwhile, with the rest of the Dragon family, they are almost at the point where Kami might feel comfortable letting them into the Room of Spirit and Time, but he wants to test how well they can handle the harsh conditions. So, he instructs them to start using Bulma's gravity chamber. Thankfully, as Piccolo was there to hear that, he is able to inform the others. They quickly decide that, when the rest of the family are in the gravity chamber, they will be on the lookout. To both Bulma and Raditz's surprise, it really bums them out that they won't be able to see each other as often anymore. But, if they're going to keep Gohan's training from the others, they're going to have to. Back over with Kakarat and Vegeta, they finally reached the end of Snake Way, and landed on King Kai's planet. For those of you wondering how long this took them, the answer is 3 months. Half the time it took Goku in canon. Now they know what Gine meant about higher gravity. They soon meet King Kai and are rather baffled by his sense of humour. But they easily enough get him to laugh with a plethora of monkey jokes that they've been on the receiving end of for years. With that, their training begins with the usual game of Catch the Monkey. They manage to catch Bubbles in 10 days, but King Kai insists on them catching him without teamwork, which takes another 10 days. This now puts the day count at 255. And since I don't want to rehash the days of training as that would be boring, I'm just going to give you the cliff notes of what everyone's power levels are and what Vegeta and Kakarat now know. First off, everyone's power levels are between 15,000 and 20,000, with Kakarat and Vegeta being the strongest at 20,000 each. The exception to this is Gohan, who is at 10,000 since he had a much lower starting point. Not as strong as either Dodoria or Zarbon, but still a hell of a jump. As for what Kakarat and Vegeta learnt from King Kai, I'm going to say they both learnt the Kaioken, the Spirit Ball, and the Genki Dama, and still had time to spare. So much time in fact that they decide to head back to Earth 1 month early, which is where we will be picking up the story again. Kakarat and Vegeta are preparing to start making their way down Snake Way. With them having mastered Kaioken and the Spirit Ball, and having become accustomed to the 10 times gravity, they feel that they should head home to help the others train and see their son. They are just about to leave when they receive an urgent message from Kami. The ship carrying Zarbon and Dodoria has sped up dramatically. Their new arrival time is in the morning. Panicking more than a little, Kakarat asks King Kai how long he thinks it would take them to get through Snake Way, to which he says about 24 hours. Kakarat and Vegeta turn to each other with a determined nod. Tell the others they need to keep them busy until midday. We'll make it 12. With that, the two Saiyans take off down Snake Way at top speed, while a frantic King Kai relays the message. That morning on Earth, Zarbon and Dodoria land their ship in the middle of a city, shocking everyone near it. Looking around at the locals, Zarbon notes that he doesn't see any Saiyans yet. Dodoria suggests that they give the monkeys a signal to let them know they're here. Grinning, Zarbon is just about to unleash an attack to level the city to the ground when a voice calls over to them. "That won't be necessary. We've been expecting you." Piccolo tells the unwelcome guests that the Saiyans that they're looking for are waiting for them in an empty valley a few miles away, and if they don't believe him, to check their scouters. When Zarbon and Dodoria ask why he's telling them this, Piccolo simply says that there's no point in them making any more of a scene than necessary, and they all simply want to get this over with. With that, he leads the agents of Frieza to the valley, where the rest of the Dragon family are waiting, with Chi-Chi, Krillin, and Yamcha all freaking out over the fact that Gohan is there. Upon arrival, the first thing that Zarbon and Dodoria see is the Saiyan Queen, crowned prince, and a small Saiyan boy decked out in all of the Saiyan royal family regalia, courtesy of Piccolo and at the insistence of Raditz. Chapter 8. This is the chapter where I stopped writing halfway through, so I'll be reading the part that was written, then from that point on, I'll be giving you the Cliff Notes version of events. Zarbon and Dodoria stare at the Saiyan Queen and Prince in shock. They had believed that Gine and Raditz were long dead, yet here they are. And from the looks of it, there's another prince now. They're not that worried though. Remember, Gine and Raditz were infamous for being underpowered, despite being related to the king. So Zarbon and Dodoria would assume that they would still be weak. They're just about to use their scouters to check how weak they are when... nothing. The scouters aren't working. With the extra experience and warnings of Raditz, Gine, and Nappa, Bulma was able to throw together a kind of scrambler. This way, not only would Zarbon and Dodoria be in the dark as to how strong they are, they would also be unable to inform Frieza of the royal family. Mostly that last one. Casting aside their scouters, Zarbon and Dodoria gloat to the Dragon family about how happy Frieza is going to be when they bring him the heads of the royal family. Only for the humans and Namekian in the group to step forward, cracking their knuckles. "Like hell you will!" Zarbon and Dodoria laugh, asking if this is really the best the royal family can do for bodyguards. From here the battle plays out, with Dodoria taking out Yamcha and Tien, while Zarbon kills Krillin and Chi-Chi. Piccolo is killed by Dodoria while protecting Gohan, and Raditz is killed by Zarbon while protecting Bulma and Gine. Seeing his two mentors and uncles dead, Gohan is filled with rage. And for the first time in this What If, Gohan experiences a rage boost. Turning to Zarbon and Dodoria, he unleashes one of his Uncle Raditz's signature moves, a double Sunday. But it's no good. Zarbon and Dodoria survive, and Gohan is left drained. As Dodoria slowly approaches him, Gohan forces himself to remain on his feet while glaring at his soon-to-be murderer. A Saiyan does not back down, does not surrender. They fight until the last. Just as Dodoria is about to grab Gohan and crush him, there is a sudden blur and the boy is gone. Gohan stares wide-eyed at the woman whose arms he now finds himself in, while a man floats beside her with Launch over his shoulder. "Mother! Father!" Kakarat and Vegeta smile at him as Kakarat pulls him close for a hug and Vegeta pats him on his back. From there, Kakarat would turn Princess Mode up to 11, and with Vegeta by her side, the two would begin their fight with Dodoria and Zarbon, in which they would kill both Zarbon and Dodoria. Vegeta and Kakarat would then ask why Raditz and Piccolo were the only ones training Gohan, then say they should have specified that they were fine with Gohan training. As Bulma's ship is already built and much bigger, everyone would be able to head off to Namek right away. However, Launch would stay behind to hold down the fort and gather the dormant Dragon Balls just in case. During the trip, Vegeta and Kakarat teach the others the Kaioken and the Spirit Bomb, as they're very pragmatic. By the time everyone reaches Namek, their power levels are at nearly 100,000. During the trip, the royal family also spend time together, which is rather bittersweet without Raditz. When they arrive on Namek, it's quiet, as Frieza doesn't know about the Dragon Balls. The group gather the Namekian Dragon Balls easily, as Kakarat is easily able to explain why they're searching for them, and the Namekians are happy to help. Elder Guru also unlocks their potential, as he's a nice guy and can sense the good in them. As everyone is about to use the Dragon Balls, King Kai informs them that Frieza is on his way to Earth. Thinking quickly, Kakarat quickly formulates a plan to get everyone back to life and create a big enough distraction to pull Frieza's attention away from Earth. Namekian Wish 1. Bring Piccolo back to life. With both Piccolo and Kami now alive again, the Earth Dragon Balls come back to life, and are ready to be used as Launch has already gathered them up. Kakarat then has King Kai deliver a message to Launch, telling her to use the Earth Dragon Balls to bring back everyone who was killed defending Earth from Zarbon and Dodoria. She then makes her final 2 wishes on the Namekian Dragon Balls: restore Planet Plant, and teleport everyone willing to fight Frieza to Planet Plant. She also requests that the dragon let those being teleported know what's happening, so as to avoid confusion and misunderstanding. The dragon family find themselves on the newly restored Planet Plant and find themselves surrounded by not only Saiyan survivors, but people from every race that has been hurt by the Frieza Empire, and some that haven't, but know it's only a matter of time before he comes after their homes too. In Chapter 9, they discover that Kakarat's plan worked, and they have 6 months before Frieza arrives on Planet Plant. Kakarat laments that she wanted a little more time before taking the fight to Frieza. Kakarat then makes a speech, thanking everyone who has come to join the fight against Frieza. She says that this is not a battle for vengeance, though she will not deny that killing the tyrant will feel good. This is to ensure that no other world will have to suffer the way they have. Many things may separate them, but they are joined by much more. The pain of loss, the understanding of suffering, the hope for a better future, and the drive to make it happen. This is where they will make their stand. The 6 months of training begin with the Dragon family meeting people from many different races: Yodradians, Fishmen, Macaeans, even members of the Galactic Patrol. This was going to introduce characters that would show up in Super later, and also reintroduce Paragus and Broly. Frieza arrives and the battle begins. Launch, Chi-Chi, Krillin, Piccolo, and Roshi each kill one of the Ginyu Force alongside their new space-bound allies. Meanwhile, Yamcha and Tien are leading their other forces to keep Frieza's army busy and out of the way, while the royal family are blasting their way through Frieza's ship to find him. During their search, they discover that Frieza Sr. is the reason that Frieza found out about the rebellion. He had been using his naive son as a means to get information on the rebellion and Bardock's plans to send his family into hiding. Originally, Gine, Raditz, Kakarat, and Vegeta had all meant to be sent into hiding together. However, Bardock had suspected that someone had sold them out and had sent Gine and Raditz into hiding early. Vegeta Sr. tries to get his son to join him, but is shocked when Vegeta punches a hole through his chest instead. He tells his father that the moment he became Kakarat's protector, his life was dedicated to her, and now that he is her husband, it's even more so. The royal family find Frieza and begin to fight. They are able to hold their own until Frieza transforms for the first time. Frieza beats on Gohan and raging Kakarat and Vegeta, who tell him to get away from their son. Oh, is this your son? Well, why didn't you say so? I would have hit him harder. Furious at seeing their son hurt and Frieza mocking them about it, Kakarat and Vegeta both become Super Saiyan at the same time. Unlike in the canon, where Goku lets Frieza transform in order to get a good fight, this does not happen here, as Kakarat and Vegeta are blinded by their rage and protective instincts. They kill Frieza before he even has a chance to go to his final form. Gohan, Gine, and Raditz calm their overprotective family members down before they can blow up the ship with them on it. Gine decides to remain on Planet Plant to aid the reconstruction and take up the role of regent, as she can see that Raditz has fallen for Bulma and Kakarat and Vegeta have come to think of Earth as their true home. Some of the Saiyans, such as Nappa, go with them. Upon arriving back on Earth, they find 2 young Saiyans fighting cold and as soldiers. The boys turn super and end cold together before welcoming the dragon family home. The boys warn Vegeta and Kakarat about Gero before taking their leave. The boy with black hair thanks his cousin for letting him come with him on this trip, saying that it was good to see his parents again. In Chapter 10, the group would storm Gero's lab right away. They then take the androids to Capsule Corp so Bulma can remove the Kill Goku programming. During this, they also discover that their people Gero kidnapped and modified except for Android 16. They also discover Cell, which Bulma starts to study. Due to Bulma's experience with RR Tech via Meta, she's able to remove the programming without issue. Lapis and Lazuli are woken up and told what happened to them. They are grateful that the Dragon team helped them instead of killing them and decide to stick around Capsule Corp. Bulma discovers that Cell is meant to eat his siblings in order to gain power. Everyone debates what to do with him. Kakarat the most vocal about not killing him, saying that it's not his fault that Gero was a complete nutcase. Bulma starts work on reconstructing the incomplete Cell to make him something more docile. 3 years pass and Bulma and Raditz officially get married and have a son, Trunks Tarip. Lapis and Lazuli have steady employment at Capsule Corp. Kakarat doesn't get the heart virus as she never went to Yardrat. In fact, she is currently working on writing up an official alliance between Earth and the Saiyans, putting Earth officially under their protection and allowing for exchange of goods such as food and tech. She and Vegeta have also had a second son, who they've named Bardock. Bulma is still working on baby Cell, Nappa is with Roshi, things are peaceful. Future Cell then shows up and absorbs Lapis and Lazuli while they're out to lunch. Future Trunks and Bardock show up and reveal their names, only to be surprised when neither Vegeta nor Kakarat are surprised. Kakarat tells her son and nephew that they deserved better from them than some basic training and a world full of problems. Piccolo and Kami fuse, and Piccolo explains to the rest of the group that after this he's going to be taking up the mantle of Earth's guardian. Cell opens up the Cell games, saying that as one created from the DNA of the majority of the Saiyan royal family, he wants to see what his family is made of. Everyone uses the Room of Spirit and Time to train. Nappa dies, then Kakarat dies, then Vegeta, Gohan, and Raditz achieve Super Saiyan 2 due to the pain of losing Kakarat. Piccolo gets the Dragon Balls working again, and everyone is wished back with the first wish. Piccolo then explains that he's removed the time restriction on the Dragon Balls so they can wish back the Saiyans that were killed by Frieza. This is his little thank you to Kakarat for the reality check she gave him years ago. And at long last, the royal family is once again whole. Chapter 11 would pick up years later, when Planet Plant and Earth have a strong alliance. Gohan is attending his first day of high school, Bardock and Trunks are attending the same elementary school, Nappa is the new general of Planet Plant, Giddy and Bardock live on Planet Plant but keep in close contact with their children and their families, who are still on Earth. Kakarat and Vegeta have had a third child, a daughter named Rehi, Krillin and Lazuli are together, Chi-Chi and Yamcha got married and had a daughter Mina, and Cell is now the newest member of the Briefs family and takes the form of one of the Cell Juniors. Bulma made him complete right out of the gate and gave him a normal aging process. Cell's new name is Micro. Gohan does still meet Videl the same way. Gohan is very popular and charismatic, but tries not to draw too much attention to his abilities. He wants to be seen as Gohan, not the Saiyan Prince. Only for Kakarat to come pick him up with Bardock, Trunks, and Micro, with Kakarat still dressed in her royal attire. Kakarat apologizes for not being dressed more casually, explaining that she had needed to leave work ASAP before she lost her temper. Gohan understands. Kakarat introduces herself to Gohan's new friends as Gohan's mum and the Saiyan ambassador. She asks them to please take care of her son. Gohan's classmates immediately dismiss Gohan's oddities as part of him being Saiyan. Gohan thanks his mum for the clever cover-up, to which Kakarat acts as though she has no idea what he's talking about. Gohan gets a new disguise and starts calling himself the Prince of Hope. Videl finds out about Gohan's identity the same way. She also finds out about him being a Saiyan prince. Videl talks him into entering the tournament, and Kakarat finds the situation both hilarious and adorable. Bardock and Gine say that they're coming to Earth to see everyone at the tournament. Kakarat also tells Chi-Chi not to butt into Gohan's love life. Videl asks why the royal family live in a modest home in the middle of a mountain and is told the story of the first DB series. Videl is shocked by the new info and begins to feel like a rotten person for dismissing the Saiyans because of what her father said. Videl is feeling down about her lack of progress, but is assured by Kakarat that Saiyans have a natural grasp on flight due to their nature as born fighters. Kakarat explains that just because they're born fighters doesn't mean they want to destroy. We fight for what we value, and for me, that will always be my family. Videl continues to visit and is practically adopted by the royal family. Kakarat explains to Videl that the word love has a much deeper meaning among Saiyans. It's not like humans where they use it in exaggeration. The word itself is somewhat sacred to them. Saiyans feel things very strongly, and when they love, they tend to do it only once. So for a Saiyan to tell someone that they love them is essentially to tell them that they are the only person they will ever love. As such, it's not something that happens often, and it's especially rare for such words to be spoken in public. She asks if Videl is willing to accept that Gohan may never say that to her, and is pleased when she says that she is. The tournament arrives and the royal family have a cute reunion. The only members of the Dragon Team entering are Videl, Gohan, Trunks, Bardock II, Micro, Lazuli, and Krillin. The older Saiyans can't enter because of them being guests of honor or some other such nonsense. During the fights, Kakarat comments that the skinny boy really got under Trunks' skin, and Chi-Chi punches out a loud woman. Trunks beats Micro due to him being older and having more experience, though he does tell his little brother that he did really well. When Trunks and Bardock's fight comes around, they have some fun banter. Just so you know, I'm not going to go easy on you, cousin. I'd expect nothing less. Meanwhile, Rehi is cheering on her brother and cousin, alerting Hercule, who's standing next to the royal family, to the boys' parentage. Neither of the boys go Super Saiyan, but they do both pass out from exhaustion. Their parents laugh, Hercule panics. Trunks and Bardock are about to pull the switcheroo, only to be stopped by Kakarat and Raditz. Chapter 12, and the final chapter, would start with the Dragon family meeting Shin and Kibito. Shin says that it's a shame that Kakarat, Vegeta, and Raditz weren't able to participate in the tournament. Hercule realizes that all of the really strong fighters are friends of the royal family. Videl wins her match but is badly hurt, and Kakarat gives her a sensu bean. When asked why she brought that to the match, Kakarat points out that every time they've attended a tournament, something weird has happened. She was coming prepared this time. Hercule thanks Kakarat for helping his daughter, earning a smile from Kakarat, who explains that Videl has become a dear friend to her family. Gohan's school friends find out that he's the Prince of Hope and a Saiyan Prince. Gohan has his energy drained by Babdi's men, and Kakarat is prevented from interfering by Shin. Kakarat tells Shin that she'll listen to him for now, but as soon as this over, if her son isn't back to normal or this threat he's talking about turns out to be smoke and mirrors, she doesn't care if he's a god among gods. She will kill him for letting her child get hurt, and for forcing her to let it happen. Shin is suddenly more frightened of Kakarat than Boo. Kakarat leaves Rehi, Bardock II, Trunks, and Micro with Piccolo and Guinea. Raditz, Vegeta, Bardock, and Kakarat follow Shin, Gohan and Videl not far behind. Shin explains the story about Bibbidi, Bobbidi, and Boo. Gohan catches up, and Kakarat and Vegeta are happy to see him okay. When Dabura attacks them, they all get out of the way quickly, except Bardock, who's turned to stone due to him being slightly slower in his old age. Kakarat, enraged at seeing her father turn to stone, kills Dabura without a second thought, restoring Bardock. Shin is beginning to realize just how big of a mistake angering the princess is. They enter the ship, much to Shin's dismay, in order to kill Bobbidi. Vegeta and Bardock have a game of rock paper scissors to determine who fights Pocus. Kakarat doesn't join, saying that she already had her turn by killing Dabura outside. Bardock tells Pocus that he may be old and a little out of practice, but he's not going to let his guard down like he did with the demon outside. This is when Bobbidi realizes that Dabura must have been killed. Bardock wins just as easily as Vegeta did in canon. Kakarat laughs and says that Bobbidi really didn't do his homework. She gives her princess mode smile and says that he should have thought twice before he hurt their family. Vegeta tells her to calm down and save her anger for when they find Bobbidi. Bobbity wonders when Earthlings got this strong and sends out more warriors to fight them. It's implied that he had more than what we saw in canon, we just never see anyone else. One of Bobbity's minions makes a comment about how Earthlings aren't supposed to be this powerful, earning laughter from the family. This is where Bobbity realizes that they're Saiyans. He tries to think of a plan when he notices the anger in Kakarat's heart directed at Shin, which is only growing stronger as they demolish his forces. Looking through her mind, he realizes that her anger is from Shin forcing her to watch her child be hurt so that they can find him. She doesn't see how this was worth letting her son get hurt. All he has to do is keep delaying them with easy fights and her anger is sure to boil over. Hell hath no fury like a protective mother. Back at the tournament, Lazuli is cleaning house, but lets Hercule win because she likes money. Back with our heroes, they have just taken out another one of Bobbity's minions and Kakarat is reaching a tipping point. She asks Shin if this is the oh-so-terrifying threat that he was warning them about. Because from where she's standing, this seems like something that Bardock II and Trunks could handle in their sleep. Shin tries to tell Kakarat that this really is serious, but she snaps at him to stow it. She yells at him for all of his failings, putting Boo on Earth in the first place rather than some barren rock somewhere, letting her son get hurt just so they could track Bobbity down, dragging her family and the whole world into this with little to no warning or explanation. Shin silently takes it, knowing deep down that she's right. In her rage, Bobbity casts his spell, turning Kakarat margin. With her rage solidified, she grabs Shin and instant transmissions them away from everyone so she can beat the snot out of him. Vegeta and Gohan tell Bardock and Raditz to go on without them, while they go to snap Kakarat out of it. Kakarat nearly kills Shin, but Vegeta, Gohan, Bardock II and Trunks, whom had shown up halfway through Kakarat's beatdown, talk sense into her. Raditz and Bardock kill Bobbity before he can do anything. The beatdown between Shin and Kakarat would not produce anywhere near as much energy as the fight between Vegeta and Goku for a few reasons. 1. Shin is not even attempting to fight back, he's just trying to dodge and survive. 2. Shin isn't a fighter, so even if he did fight back, he wouldn't be producing very much power. And 3. Kakarat is stopped much quicker than Vegeta was. Kakarat says that they opened Boo's shell, reasoning that A. It's not fair to blame it for what it did while being mind-controlled, and B. If it is pure evil and they don't destroy it now, someone else is going to try to resurrect it anyway. They let Boo out and Kakarat immediately goes mom mode on him, treating him like she would one of her children. Boo is confused but decides that he likes the stern but nice lady. Shin asks how Kakarat was able to tame Boo, and she says that Boo is just an overgrown toddler, and she's raised 2 of those and is now raising a 3rd already. Raditz says that it seems like they both have monster children now. Everyone laughs and they go home to introduce everyone to Boo, who is now a member of the Son family. Several years later, Gine and Bardock have retired and left the throne to Raditz, who has moved to Planet Plant with his family. Kakarat and her family are still on Earth, and Kakarat is still the acting ambassador. Gohan and Videl got married and had a daughter named Pan. Krillin and Lapis have had Marion, and so on. The next World Tournament rolls around and the whole Dragon family attends, as this year it coincides with their family day. Vegeta and Kakarat watch in amusement as their family excitedly talk about the tournament. Vegeta and Kakarat reminisce about everything that they've gone through up until now, and Kakarat is reminded of something that she's been meaning to tell Vegeta for a while. Grabbing his shirt, she pulls him down so she can whisper something into his ear. While Vegeta is frozen in shock with a blush on his face, Kakarat races after their children, who are calling for them to hurry up. Then, smiling to himself, Vegeta follows after her, wondering how she always manages to beat him to it. And that, everyone, is the end of this story. I hope you enjoyed it even with the rough ending. I'm Rune. See you in the next story.